Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Karen Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Karen Pulver.
Welcome everyone to Grateful Goddesses. What is your recipe for a dream? What are your dreams? Think back to when you were younger or even now, today. I'm in my 50s and I still have dreams. And I wonder, what are the ingredients for these dreams? Well, of course, positivity. Positivity is number one on my list. Because if we're not positive, we cannot attract positivity into our lives. Of course, education of anything that it is, whether it be at school education or perhaps learning a language or diving deep into an area of interest. Hard work, determination, yes. But what about the other ingredients like love, intuition, persistence, passion, support, and an ingredient that you will be surprised with, mistakes. Yes, mistakes. You might be listening and thinking, mistakes, how could that be an ingredient for a dream? But it is actually, in my opinion, and I believe our guest's opinion, although I don't want to speak for her, but I've witnessed that a mistake is not a mistake that you're going to be held back by. It's actually something that could propel you forward. It is definitely being able to make a mistake and looking at it as beauty and potential and surprise, the unexpected. So we're going to dive into the recipe for a dream with our guest today, Lara Gilmore. Welcome, Lara Gilmore, to Grateful Goddesses.
Hi.
Hi, so nice to see you. Tell me about where you are right now.
So I am at our newest project called Casa Maria Luigia. And Casa Maria Luigia is in the countryside of Modena. It's about 15 minutes from downtown Modena. I'm under the roof beams. I'm in the tiniest little room, which is an apartment that I carved out for myself. It's where the balsamic vinegar was kept. And so we call it the acetaia. And this was filled with balsamic vinegar. It's under the roof beams. It's my secret hideaway. So it's like my bird's nest. Nobody can see me, but I can see everybody. And this is where I do my thinking, working, change my clothes, take a quick shower after gardening, and where I decided to speak with you. For one reason, I'm away from our guests because the house is full today, which is great, but also because it has some of my favorite artwork in here. So
that's a great space. We all need to create spaces like that in our homes where we can just really reflect and be ourselves, right? And not have to
I read Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own very long time ago, and it really stuck to heart. And I have always tried to find in however big or small a house I had and however many people I was living with in college or first apartments, a tiny space that I could call my own, where my own mess was mine and no one could judge it. And so I think it's very important, however big or small that space is. Sometimes it's just a box with your things in it, but a place where you can feel safe and not judged, and where you can do your best thinking and even be able to isolate yourself a bit from everything going on around you.
So tell us way back. Well, I don't want to say way back because I believe we're both in our 50s, and I don't like when people say way back.
52.
I'm 53, so girlfriend, there you go. But so looking back when you were in New York and you studied fine arts and you learned Italian, you were working at Cafe di Nonna. Tell us what your dreams were then. Like, for example, I was always wondering, why did she study Italian? Why were you so interested in that first ingredient to your dream, which is love of the language?
Well, actually, the whole reason I'm here today, it all began in 10th grade. So I was at a boarding school in 10th grade, and I didn't get along with my French teacher. I mean, really didn't get along with him.
Oui.
In 10th grade, I decided that the only way that I could really spite him was to change languages. Spanish was an easy choice, but Italian was what was going to really get him, because the French and the Italians are like loving, kissing, hating cousins. And so I took up Italian in 11th grade, and I fell in love not only with my teacher, who was a very elegant, man in his early 70s from Como, northern Italy, and he came to class every day with a beautiful suit and tie. But he really introduced me not only to a language, but a culture, a way of living, a way of thinking, how to reflect on the past, how to think about being innovative. And he drew out the best of Italy for me. And so those 2 years of high school, when I studied Italy, I also studied Italian culture, and I stumbled upon the Renaissance and art history. And I fell in love with the place. And as soon as I graduated from from high school, my first trip was to Europe, and I wanted to go to Italy. And so there was already something Italian running in my blood. I wasn't from any Italian heritage. I'm a mix of Irish, Dutch, English, Scottish, Northern European. My grandparents were from Texas. So, I'm a real mutt. And the only thing I was missing was a little bit of Latin blood. And so on my first trip to Italy, trained, hitchhiked, slept in the most, simple places. But I had this feeling that someday I would come back to that country. And years later, I found myself in New York studying art, working in the theater as well at the Wooster Group, being a volunteer. And I needed a second job. I was working at Aperture Magazine and getting paid very little. I was working in the photography department. And so I stumbled into a cafe on the corner of Grand and Wooster, which was my neighborhood. And they were looking for a bartender, and it was called Cafe di Nonna. And I said, well, I speak Italian. I know how to make a cappuccino. I know a little bit about wine. I've traveled. And by the time I got back to my apartment in the East Village, they called me in to start working the next day. And by serendipity or fate or whatever you want to call it, my husband Massimo, who happened to be in New York taking some time off from his first restaurant, also walked into that same little cafe on the corner of Grand and Mercer, kind of looking for a job, part-time job. He'd been living in New York City, trying to keep himself busy. And as soon as he got back to his apartment, he was asked to come and start working the next day. So we rolled into this place, tiny little assuming cafe. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't Michelin. The same moment, and I introduced myself in the entranceway, and he was in the kitchen, which was an open kitchen, and I was behind the bar. And that's where it all began.
Was it love at first sight? I have to ask.
All right. It wasn't like, oh my God, he's, this gorgeous Italian stallion, whatever. No, it wasn't that kind of love at first sight. But within the first 5 hours that we worked together, I definitely saw that this person was unlike anybody I'd ever met in my entire life, and that he was a doer. He was a person who was going to get things done. He opened up this classic story. First order comes in, and it's tortellini. And he says, tortellini? What, tortellini? Where are the tortellini? And he starts looking for the tortellini. The sous chef says, they're in that pot. What do you mean they're in that pot? And he opened up a boiling pot of water, and there were these huge tortellini that had been cooking for hours and hours. And if anyone has ever cooked a tortellini, it needs to be cooked 3 or 4 minutes, immediately taken out. Otherwise, it's not worth eating anymore.
Right.
And so on the spot, I'm sorry, there's no tortellini. And he invented a brand new dish. It was his first night at that restaurant. And I saw that there was a kind of reaction, a kind of takeover, a kind of charisma that I hadn't seen not only in a chef, but in anybody. And so maybe that's love at first sight. We became fast friends, and we're inseparable. Right. And after 5 months, he had to go back to Italy because he had a restaurant back there and his family there, and things to take care of. And so I ended up following him and basically never went back.
So you had a feeling inside on that first meeting, like you said.
Yeah, it was totally instinctive, completely.
Instinctive, intuitive, which leads us to the first question by our featured goddesses. So I'd like to invite our featured goddesses to join us. Okay, so Lara, featured goddess, can you ask your question to Lara Gilmore?
Hi, Lara. It's so great to have an opportunity to talk to you. So because we're trying to delve into intuition today, I was wondering, when you took the leap of faith to move to be with Massimo and Modena, can you recall any of those initial feelings of what made you trust your gut? Could you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, it's so nice to meet another Lara, because there aren't that many of us out there in the world. I don't know about you, but my mother called me Lara after Dr. Zhivago, because she was pregnant with me in 1967. I was born in 68 and watched Dr. Zhivago. So You look a little bit more like the Lara and Dr. Zhivago than me. But anyway, so if I go back to that moment, you know, as I said earlier, Massimo and I started working together, and we had shared interests, and we became fast friends, and we formed a community around us immediately. Other waiters, a bartender, some Italian friends that had come to visit Massimo. And I saw in a short period of time that there was this magical power to create things together. We were working in a little cafe, but that cafe, over the short amount of time that we were working together, became very popular. It got ratings. You know, Moby was coming and having a sandwich there for lunch every day. And there were just, we created an energy. And so I think that my decision to move to Italy, and I bought a one-way ticket.
Wow.
I bought a one-way ticket. I had left my apartment, was this leap of faith based on the idea that somehow with this person, there was going to be a future of creating things together, making things happen. And you could call that love at first sight, but it was almost not an egocentric kind of love. It wasn't just about he and I and the two of us taking on the world. It was about enlarging everything, that the energy between us, and extending that out to projects, to people, and engaging a much larger audience. And so I think it's rare when you meet those people. They can end up being your husband or your partner. They could be partners in a business. They could end up being, you know, your best group of girlfriends, or the team that you guys have put together. This sense of that together, you're so much more than individually.
Wow, that's incredible. First off, I will say I'm also named after the film Dr. Zhivago, which is such a coincidence. But I'm in awe. I think that is such a wonderful connection you had, and so inspiring to so many women who should look for that in a partner, and hopefully like just go with that gut feeling and take those chances, because it certainly led you to such a beautiful relationship and so many amazing projects together, which is so inspiring for all of us. One of the amazing stories that we learned about was when Massimo proposed to you. And I understand it came by a bit of surprise, but it really was telling in that he wanted to start his restaurant being engaged to you. Could you share a little bit about that and how you felt in that moment? Were you shocked, or were you expecting it?
Well, no, I definitely wasn't expecting it. I mean, we had worked very hard for 6 months. So the story goes, moved to Modena. 2 months after I moved to Modena, Massimo gets an amazing call. He's gone back to his original restaurant. He's trying to bring it back to life. He'd been gone for 6 months, and the business didn't go very well when he left. I moved to Modena at the end of September, and 2 months later, he gets a call from Alain Ducasse. Alain Ducasse is a 3-star Michelin chef in Paris and has a restaurant in Monte Carlo, and calls Massimo's small little no Michelin restaurant in the countryside saying, I want to come by and taste some balsamic vinegar. Can I have lunch at your restaurant? Of course, Massimo was like crazy about this, and I worked on helping him with the dining room and the menu and all these things. And that day, I had this sort of little bit of a forbearing sense that this was the end of Massimo being in Modena, because if Alain Ducasse was going to come and visit him, then maybe he wasn't going to stay in Modena very long, in this very small little town, small restaurant. And in fact, Alain Ducasse invited him to come to Hotel de Paris. And so in a flash, he was off. He was left. He went to live in Monte Carlo and work in that restaurant. And so, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen to our relationship, to our life together. I had found a job and I was working on other projects in Modena, so I stayed there. And little by little, I realized that there was no reason for me to stay in Modena if Massimo wasn't going to be in Modena. And so I asked him if he thought he would be coming back. And he said, you know, right now my life is in Monte Carlo. I'm cooking. I'm working at a 3 Michelin star restaurant. This is my dream. And so I said, well, you know, that's your dream. I'll let you have your dream, but I'm going to move back to the States. And when I moved back to the States, shortly after, he came after me saying, I realized that as much as I've wanted to have a 3 Michelin star restaurant, if I don't have it with you, then there's no point in having it at all. And so at that point, he convinced me to move back to Modena, and we looked for a restaurant. and we bought a restaurant that had been existing for 50 years. And we started renovating it on a dime, painting the walls ourselves and getting, local seamstresses to make the curtains and things like that, very simply done. And just before opening, my father was having some health issues. So I had to fly to the United States because he was getting an operation. And so on the opening day, I was in New York and Massimo was in Modena. And he gives me a call at 8 in the morning. And of course, 8 in the morning, if you don't have kids and you're still in your 20s, you're probably still asleep, as I was. My mom gets me out of bed and I come down and pick up the phone. And he says, we're opening the restaurant today. And I just wanted to make sure we're going to get married, right? I said, what are you asking me to marry you? You asked me to marry you over the phone? And he didn't even say, yes, I'm asking me to marry you. He just repeated, we're going to get married, right? And I said, Massimo, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Are you kidding me? I can't answer a question like that. But yes, we did get married. And that was the proposal of a lifetime, which I wasn't expecting. But in hindsight, I realized that he was asking me not to marry him. He was asking me to marry the enterprise, asking me to marry the restaurant, asking me to marry every waiter and chef and artisan that we were going to work with. He was asking me to marry so much more than just him, but to marry his dreams, to marry his passions, to marry the sacrifices that needed to be made because, marrying a restaurant is not easy. It means that you don't really have your husband around very much and you don't have a lot of family dinners, but you do, what I learned over the last 25 years, is that you do have a huge family. I mean, we have 2 children of our own, but we really have like 45, 50, 60 children, and our family is growing and growing. And so that initial instinct or that intuition that I felt about with this person, that together we were going to create amazing things, came to fruition.
But you had to persist. So Alyssa wants to talk about that ingredient of persistence.
Hi, Lara.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. We definitely, to achieve your dreams, right? You need love and passion, but you also need a lot of hard work and grit and persistence. And obviously when Francescana first opened, it wasn't immediately considered, a 3 Michelin star restaurant that was ranked the finest in the entire world.
Right.
Has been. So, and it was also, in fact, not always received well in the very beginning by critics and by the Modenese people. It was a bit sort of risky and maybe too innovative and provocative, right? And just different. And so, but despite that, I think I read where Massimo came to you and said, oh, maybe we should close. Maybe we should close the restaurant. And you said, give it more time. Let's keep going with this and, see where it takes us. So obviously there was a lot of, faith and confidence, but persistence, I think, was probably a key ingredient there. So I just wanted to talk to you about that and how did that, how did you know that was the right path? That must have been very scary, right? When it wasn't initially received well. And you had to sort of have this feeling, right? That you just needed to continue, needed to push forward. And that you knew that you could deliver to the critics and to the world and to the Modenese people, something that they would ultimately love.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Alyssa, because, giving up is something that I think all of us in our lives, we remember moments when we gave up on something. This is really silly, but I gave up playing piano and I was, 10 or 11 years old, and I still really regret that moment of giving up something. I mean, I wasn't a great pianist or anything, but if I'd continued, I could play the piano. And today, I can't play anything. But giving up is such an easy way out. And when we started on our adventure, I thought it was going to be so easy. Here's this great chef, and he knows everybody in town. He already had a restaurant that was really successful. He cooked with Alain Ducasse, and he spent time in New York. It's going to go great. I had no idea that it would be such a long journey. And I don't think he had any idea that it would be such a long journey either. But he had completely changed his point of view. He wanted to be more provocative. He really wanted to Italian kitchen forward. He wanted to change things. He's an iconoclast in his thinking. And so I think my experience studying art, studying contemporary art, reading about artists and their lives, whether it's artists from the Renaissance or the Picasso or Van Gogh or any of the artists who have had triumphs but also difficulties in being understood, really helped me encourage Massimo, because it's very rare that an artist is recognized immediately. And it's only after 20, 30, 40 years of their career often that then they get recognition. Today, the art world works in a very different way, but some of the greatest artists we know live their entire lives without being recognized. And I think that I felt Massimo had such an incredible vision that needed time. My father was always very wise with Massimo, and Massimo was agitated. And every year, well, I can't believe I didn't get the Michelin star, and wanting so much and wanting it all to come quickly. And my dad would always say, Massimo, be like a tree, grow slowly, so that when the wind comes, when the storms rage, you're not going to move. You're going to be steady and strong. And that advice over the years sunk in. And in hindsight, was the best advice we were ever given, because all of that long, arduous time, not only getting recognition, but also getting out of the criticism of very conservative Italian population, really gave Massimo the opportunity to grow and find out who he was, what his kitchen represented, establish a vocabulary, an identity. And by the time people were listening and ready to experience his kitchen, he had something to say. Persistence is so important in anything. I mean, the world looks, especially social media and Instagram, everybody's lives look so amazing and things look so simple, but we all know that life is long and difficult and there's so many challenges. But when you get through those challenges and you've actually been able to achieve something, all of those passages that you went through are so much more precious to you. And if you hadn't gone through them, you almost think, what would your life have been? What a boring story. What a simple line. Who wants a simple line as a life? You know, we all want something a little bit more dynamic and exciting. So perseverance is really important. I think the early years, the most important thing in our marriage was that I put myself always at the disposition of the restaurant. I had a young child. She grew up like playing under the tables with her Barbies, and whatever needed to be done, I would do, whether it was peeling a potato or doing a flower arrangement or just being quiet and not expecting my husband to be home anytime soon. And sometimes, as partners, we have to know when it's our time and when it's their time. You know, it's not always time for everybody to have the big front stage, be, up in front stage and center. So many years I've been behind the curtain, very happy to be behind that curtain, behind that stage, helping Massimo in whatever way I could, whether it's translating his ideas, his recipes, creating support for the press, for contacts, for whatever I could do. And now I have an opportunity also to be part of the front and center stage. So sometimes in life, you just have to be patient and wait for your moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it all comes back to me now. And I was watching the Chef's Table episode that highlights Massimo and you and the restaurant. I think it was the general manager of the restaurant, Giuseppe Palmieri, who said, and I'm going to quote this, so I hope you're not embarrassed, Lara is the most important part of the success of Osteria Francescana. So I think based on everything that you've said, I mean, you were so pivotal in actually making it happen, right? That encouraging him to go on. So he certainly, is the amazing chef behind it all. But I think clearly it was your persistence and your encouragement that helped it stick around and become the world-renowned restaurant that it is.
Thank you. There's also another person I have to give a lot of credit to, which is, and it's not really his doing, is our son, Charlie. So we have a son who was born with a genetic syndrome, and for many years we didn't know what he would be able to do, whether he was going to be able to walk or talk, or now he's 19 years old and he speaks 2 languages and he runs around and he makes tortellini. And so it's a good ending to a story, but there were many years when we weren't sure what was going to happen with Charlie. And I have to say that having a child with any kind of difficulty or disability or challenges really kept us grounded. He was born in the year 2000. We got our first Michelin star in 2001. And his whole young childhood were the years that we were running, that we were crazily putting time and energy into the restaurant, and at the same time dedicating time to him. But it really kept us grounded. And whenever there was a moment of thinking about, throwing in the towel, questioning what we were doing, we always thought about Charlie and trying to make sure that whatever we were doing, we were going to be able to ensure that he was going to have security, he was going to be able to have a good life. And so sometimes these unexpected events in your life actually keep you very grounded. There was no time for us to be vain or selfish or think too much about, our own good fortune. We just kept our heads focused and on the ground, working as hard as we could to make Osteria Francescana a success. It gave us even more drive and more of a mission to make that restaurant as successful as it could be.
It is very clear how passionate you are. We met a year ago, just about to the day. I have to say, my husband and I with some friends stayed at Casa Maria Luigia. We stayed there for one night and we met you. And I was so struck by your hospitality, number one, just being there and greeting us and talking to us just like family. And we met Charlie. I think your daughter was away studying, but of course we met Massimo, we met Charlie, and your love is very, very clear of how much you love your family, your husband, the Casa Maria Luigia, and the staff, and you have other passions as well, which is another ingredient. You're very passionate now, as you say, you're now more front stage with the curtains open to you, and you have worked on some very, very important initiatives that are definitely serving others in the world. So important to extend yourself to help others with the resources that you have. Can you talk about your passions? And I know it's probably hard to pinpoint a favorite one, but expand a little bit on them.
Well, we have two amazing projects. One started back in 2015, and it happened serendipitously in a way. Many things in our lives happen. We were invited to participate in the World Expo in Milan, and the theme was Feed the Planet. And we had no idea how to participate, or we were getting lots of invitations to do a pop-up restaurant or some kind of dining event. And Massimo and I looked at each other and we thought, well, this has nothing to do with the theme of Expo, which was Feed the Planet, Energy for Life. How do you feed the planet? We don't need to do another gala dinner somewhere and have people drinking champagne. And, what message can the restaurant world leave, especially coming from Italy, to Expo? And one morning, Massimo came up with this crazy idea, and I say crazy because at the time I thought, how are we ever going to make this come to fruition? And the whole idea was, let's open a soup kitchen, community kitchen for people who are in need, whether they're on the street or working poor, low income, that not only gives people a meal, but invites them into a space that they would normally not be invited into. A beautiful space, a space with beautiful tables and chairs and artwork on the walls and lighting and a sense of freedom and a sense of dignity. And let's serve them a meal that feels dignified. Let's serve them a meal where there are volunteers who are bringing that meal to them, sitting at a table as if they're in a restaurant. And how can we make that meal as delicious as possible? Well, we can call on all of our chef friends and colleagues from around the world who will be passing through Milan anyway during Expo to come and cook. But then we thought, well, are they just going to cook recipes from their restaurants? Does that make any sense? And we started thinking about all the inevitable food waste that was going to happen at a fairground like Expo, and all the food waste that happens every day in our cities, coming out of grocery stores, simple bodegas, perfectly edible food that's being taken off shelves because it doesn't look good, because it's past a sale date, because it's just not as appealing as it was 3 days before. And so we started realizing that there needed to be a moment of recognition where chefs could get involved in changing the perception and fighting food waste just by taking perfectly edible food that's been taken off the shelves and cooking it into delicious meals. And so we created this project called the Refettorio Ambrosiano, and we thought it was going to be a 6-month project. It was going to, go on for the amount of time of Expo. Right. But as Expo started to end in the end of October, we realized that we had created something that was going to continue. The volunteers still were volunteering. We had chefs coming from all over Milan cooking. The refettorio had more recipes than they even knew what to cook with. We had more suppliers of food. No one had to buy any food because we were being brought beautiful food every day. And we realized that we had created around us another community, a community that wanted to take care of its lesser and more in difficulty citizens. And so from that moment on, we decided to see if we could open another refettorio in another part of the world, and so forth and so on. And so we began this project called Food for Soul. And Food for Soul is the idea of chefs working together to fight not only poverty and hunger, but really to fight food waste and fight it through beauty. Beauty in the meals that are created, beauty in the service that's given, and offering people who are in need, not only because they're hungry, but emotionally in need, a little bit of dignity through a well-crafted meal. And it doesn't sound like much, and we're not feeding 5,000 people or 10,000 people. Every night we sit at a table, 100 people, but those 100 people, we know them by name, and they feel like they're part of a family. And so day after day, you can create a new kind of community. So in a way, we just leveraged what we'd always done at our restaurant, thought about the power of beauty, the value of hospitality, and also the need to think about the quality of ideas. Chefs are not only the sum of their recipes, they have brilliant ideas from all over the world. And if they come together, they can do a lot to impact not only food waste, but hunger around the world. So now we have 7 refettorios, and we're working on our next one, which we hope will be
in Chicago.
In Chicago, maybe, I don't know. We're looking at San Francisco.
I will be the first on the list. I will be the first on the list to volunteer.
Chicago would be great. The thing about these projects is that it's not about charity. It's not a charity project. It's a cultural project. Mm-hmm. It's for everyone a cultural project, because when you create a beautiful space, people want to work in it. People want to volunteer. They want to cook. They want to serve. And it's a win-win, because also it bridges that gap between haves and haves not, between those in need and those who can give more, and creates a real bonding, which is so hard today, especially when there is so much difference in the United States and around the world. That is one of our projects. Second project, which is even closer to my heart right now. I just returned yesterday from Rome, where our group called Tortellante, it's a group of 25 young on the autism spectrum, who we have taught over the past 3 years how to make tortellini. And this is the cover of Food and Wine Italy. And these are the guys' tortellini. Basically, before lockdown, on February 19th, we were at the party to inaugurate this amazing Food and Wine. And here's some of the pictures of our guys making tortellini and the nonnas that helped them. So before COVID, we were in Milan getting an award and picking up the first copy of the magazine. And then yesterday, the day after yesterday, we were in Rome with the Minister of Italy and a bunch of senators trying to help pass a law to promote social enterprises with young people who have disabilities, trying to show these administrators and politicians that there's another side to disability, which is diversely able, and that what our young men are doing making tortellini is not only creating a business economy, but saving a very old pasta tradition that many of their other friends are not interested in learning to make, or, so, we're not going to have the nonna around forever to make tortellini. So somebody has got to come in and save the tortellini tradition. So we thought, why not have our boys be the ones who save it, our superheroes of homemade pasta? And so that's another project that's very close to my heart, because I see my son growing, and I see that he can also be part of our restaurant world in his own way and define it however he needs to define it. And, it's not 3 Michelin stars, but maybe he's going to make even a bigger difference than Massimo will someday.
It's incredibly empowering to hear your passions. just incredible. I mean, you're taking everything that you've learned and that you've accomplished with your husband and your family, and you're spreading it out to the world. To expand on that, what you do is creating, I mean, like artwork on the walls and the open skylights, like just to really feel like just at home. I feel like that is just such an incredible, incredible accomplishment that you've done.
Well, I think that sometimes when we consider, doing something charitable, giving someone a meal, oftentimes it's not factored in the celebration part of what
Absolutely.
a meal is. Because a meal, sitting down with the people you love or the people you may not even know, breaking bread with people and having that opportunity of sharing a meal is one of the most incredible things that we have as human beings, and what makes us unique. And to be able to share that with someone who maybe doesn't have that opportunity for whatever moment they're going through. It could be in a suit because maybe they just lost their job, or,
Exactly.
there's a lot of fragility. There was a beautiful article in the New York Times just 3 days ago about how poverty and hunger are not always parallel, and that the poverty level may not be low, but there still may be a lot of need for food. And I think we've seen all around the nation that food banks have been visited by many more people than they expected. There are lines out the door, and it's families with cars, and it's families with, tragedy comes very quickly, and food is one of the most important things we have. So anyway, these projects are all projects. The most important thing is that they could all be copied, replicated, sent out in the world. And once again, it's about creating community. I think at the end of the day, I had such great lessons in working in a restaurant with Massimo about how you create a team, how you create a group, and how you get people involved and passionate about what they're doing, and and also share your own dreams with them and make them feel part of that dream. And if you can extend that to other projects, whether it's young boys making tortellini or opening community kitchens, then you really can contaminate people with this and positive energy. And at the end of the day,
yes,
the energy's out there. So let's use it and put it to good use and make it work.
But you need support. So that's our next ingredient.
Yes.
You need support. Without support, it may be very, very difficult to achieve that dream. So Dina would like to ask you about that, about the support that you have.
Hi.
You so lovingly and beautifully spoke about how you've supported your husband in your restaurant. How does he support you, and or how are you being supported in your everyday goings and doings and continuing to be so forward thinking and present?
That is such a hard question. I think it's a hard question for women in general, especially women who take on responsibilities and challenge themselves and have high expectations of themselves. Every time I go to somewhere to, like get a massage or something like that, the massagist is always saying, you really should be a little bit easier on yourself, because I can tell that you're really expecting a lot from yourself. So I think women who are determined and ambitious, we have a hard time asking for help. We have a hard time reaching out and asking for support. And I think that, during the most difficult years when Massimo was working all the time, and I knew that I couldn't turn to him for too much support because he had other things to think about, I started really looking out and trying to find what I call guardian angels. And the guardian angels could be the most unexpected character, the barista at my local bar who would make me a cappuccino every morning. And because I would see her every morning, I could tell her what's going on, and she could share things in her life. And maybe this happens more in Italy than it does in the United States, because things are much more stagnant here, and you see the same people again and again. But I realize that there's guardian angels everywhere. They don't have to be, these big golden statues. They could be a person that you see every day in your workplace, or at your local bar getting your cappuccino. They could be the fruit and vegetable vendor. They can be a good friend of yours. But oftentimes when we open up ourselves to others and we show our own fragility and our own need, people come to our rescue. So to find your guardian angels, sometimes you have to actually be very humble and express your needs, not because you're a victim but really just talk about the difficulties you're having in your life. And so I learned a lot that sharing my difficulties was a way of finding these guardian angels who gave me support. And sometimes the support was just, a hug or a pat on the back. Other times support could come in helping me find a babysitter or helping me somehow down the road to finding better people to better doctors or things like that. But I think sharing, not closing ourselves off is the key. And it's hard. It's really, really hard because, we're all like tough and dynamic women, and we want to be able to do everything. We want to be Atlas and put the world on our shoulders and not have a moment of need. But showing our moments of need is actually a window of opportunity to invite people into your life.
Yeah, that's incredible. So wise. You're so wise when you were so young in those moments. I think to me that's something that I grew to know years later, right? Like when I was a new mom, I didn't have that wisdom to seek out others. I put that all on my husband, and that's just incredible that you had that wisdom at such a early time.
Well, he wasn't there, and we didn't have cell phones back then, so everything was a little bit more complicated. But I think also growing up in a small, like being a young mother in a small town in Italy, I also learned from generations of other women that there's an incredible network of women here in Italy, and they support each other, and mothers and grandmothers, and even the art of pasta making. No one is ever making pasta by themselves. I learned very quickly they're always getting around a table and making pasta together. It's kind of like, making a quilting circle because it just takes too long to make it by yourself. And if you're all together making it, you're going to get so much more pasta out of it. And in the meantime, you're sharing your triumphs, your difficulties, gossip. And, today we're all so busy. It's so hard to find that time. We're either running to the gym or our kids or whatever it is, to find that time just to sit down and do something with other people, other women, because it's an excuse also to be able to open up and share. I know sometimes there's book clubs. I know sometimes there's other things, but maybe you need to start a pasta making class all together, because it's a great way to share your needs and stories and help each other, support each other.
I know that Dina, she is now married, but she was a young widow. And we talked about the fact that I believe at first you were not taking support from people. You thought you could just deal on your own, right, Dina?
Yeah. So, you go into that, survival mode. My kids were little. I couldn't, tuck myself away in my bed or, be that. So, but I did. I had experiences where I would go to school and people would come up to me and they would say, "You look so great, and you're dressed and you have makeup on, and how are you doing this?" Like I wanted just to be normal. I didn't want to be that like
right.
vulnerable person. But I inevitably, whether I asked or didn't ask, had a village of people. I had my little Italy, so to speak, and people just did. They just were there. I mean, I had best friends that moved in and would stay with me until I finally said, "Okay, you need to go back to your home." And I was very fortunate. We had an amazing group of people that just weren't going to let me, fall down completely.
And they help to empower you to be strong. And I feel with the goddesses and this mission that I have, it's really to start learning about helping each other, not women sometimes put each other down. And it's about learning from each other and empowering and helping and holding our hands and being open to that support.
That's one of the reasons I fell in love with Italy when I moved here, is that sense of community wherever you go. I mean, I can't walk down the street, not because we have a famous restaurant. People know who I am and say hello, but I see that my friends who, they don't have famous restaurants or anything, but people know you, they recognize you, because there's this sort of interaction that happens on a daily basis. And if you think about it, life is that daily basis. So our everyday interactions with, the grocer or the gas station guy or the coffee maker or the barista, whatever you want to say, those are the interactions of our life, and they can enrich our lives, and we can get so much from them if we open up and ask and generous, and we invite people into our lives, even people that we don't know that well. So we do all have a little Italy around us. You just have to create it and believe in it.
And open up to it, for sure. The last ingredient, I know there's more that you could possibly add, but the one I feel that for my life, and I'm looking at your life, is mistakes. And we cannot not talk about oops, I dropped the lemon tart. And I just want to tell you a quick story. So I'm wearing the dress that I wore the night that we came and ate dinner. And you're not aware of this, Lara, but my husband and I were traveling to Tuscany to meet friends, and we decided we would stay in Modena. So my girlfriend supposedly had made the reservation. So we arrived at Casa Maria Luigia, but my husband and I were on the train to Bologna because they arrived there before us. And she said, oops, we're not going there. And we said, oh, where are we eating? And she said, here at the Casa Maria Luigia. And we were like, wait, that's not what we had planned to do. And she said, well, this is where we're eating. And I had no idea that it would actually be selections of some of the iconic dishes at the time. But what happened was we arrived and we met you, and we just were so excited about this, staying at this beautiful, beautiful place. And then the night it was raining, your staff had umbrellas and brought us into the carriage house. And right away I saw artwork. I believe, I'm trying to find the artist's name, Damien Hirst, which is artwork of, like, for example, it would say mushroom, and then it would have like 25 milligrams, like a prescription for the items. So right away I was like, this is so cool. And then indeed we were served some of those iconic dishes, but more than that, this little mistake that my friend had made by not reserving the restaurant we thought turned out to be such an amazing, magical night. We got to hear you speak. Jessica gave a fantastic talk about the restaurant, all the, just the inspiration that both you and Massimo had. And I just sent you this video the other day. I actually not only had the lemon tart, Jessica encouraged me to go behind and just say, just ask him, just ask Massimo if you can break and you can make your own lemon tart with him. And I'm like, no way, there's no way I'm doing that. And she said, go, go, go. So I went, and he said, your mother, she's going to help you make the lemon tart. And he went, boop. I went boop, and it was so fun. So that mistake, we joke about it because the whole rest of our trip, whenever we'd make mistakes, we'd say, oops, we got on the wrong train. Oh, well. Oops, we dropped the pizza dough in a pizza making class. Oops, all these things. So that was just a fun story I wanted to share with you because it was such a magical, magical night. And sometimes these mistakes, like we said, can turn out to be actually more, a better dream than we had thought, these unexpected. Can you talk about mistakes?
Well, I mean, the Oops, I Dropped the Lemon Tart has become such an iconic dish for us, not only because it's delicious and has all the flavors of Southern Italy that are brought together, but because of this incident that happened in the kitchen. We had created this beautiful, perfect lemon tart with all these different citrus ingredients from Southern Italy, and there's capers and there's bergamot and hot peppers, and it all comes together in this very precisely constructed perfect lemon tart. And one night on a Saturday night, the last two tarts were being served, the end of service, and one of them drops on the floor. And our pastry chef, Taka Kondo, Japanese, very, very precise about everything he does, was speechless and couldn't even move because he didn't have another lemon tart to serve. This is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. It was on the floor, completely broken, and the whole kitchen was frozen with him. And Massimo from the other side of the room was like, what's going on? And all of a sudden he comes around and he sees this mess on the floor. And I remember Taka just watching him, and Massimo looked down at it and he looked at Taka and he said, Taka, this is the most beautiful thing you've ever made. And so from then on, the tart has always been broken. We reconstructed it to be broken because in that moment, what was missing from that dessert was the mistake. What was missing was the poetry of the unexpected. What was missing was that imperfection that allows you to enter into the emotional state of anything. When things are too perfect, we kind of like freeze up a little bit. When there's a little bit of imperfection, someone's got a gap in their teeth, or their hair isn't perfect, or they've got freckles, or, the house isn't perfectly organized, that's the moment when you can feel closer to that person, that space, you can relax. And so I think there's a lot to be said for mistakes and imperfection. And oftentimes we don't let ourselves recognize that a mistake can often be an even better solution to the one that we had so meticulously planned or organized. And so there's in art, there are so many different examples of artists who play off of their own mistakes. And I think that it's a very important reminder. And the one reason that we have kept Oops, I Lemon Tart on the menu is because we want to remind people that even if you are pursuing to be the best restaurant in the world and all the perfection you need for those Michelin stars and the guides, at the end of the day, if you don't have an emotional connection to what you're making, to what you're eating, to be able to share that with your guests, it doesn't really mean anything. And so I think that for us is Oops, I Dropped the Lemon Tart. Mistakes are key. I mean, you know, if we don't make mistakes, we don't learn. And I think that mistakes help us also recognize that humans we're all about failure. And then we get up and we try again, and maybe we do something a little bit better.
And learning from them instead of a mistake, a happy accident, or, you know, to propel you forward.
Here at Maria Luigia, every night we are serving Francescana menu that has our classic dishes.
Yes.
And the restaurant in Modena is now, we've basically given them the freedom to no longer serve those dishes. And so they have their own tasting menu. They have a new tasting menu after lockdown that's all about the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club Band, which for the Beatles was this turnaround moment. They were a successful band. They were on their, you know, they had their music, they had their path. And then they decided to go to India and completely change their aesthetic, change their mood, change their music. And so we thought about our lockdown here in Italy as an imaginary trip to some other place in time. And all of our chefs were given this challenge to think about recipes based on that album. Because in a way, we wanted, even though everyone is in their home, they couldn't see each other, whether they were back with their families or in their Modena in their small apartments, we wanted everyone to take this lockdown as a moment to be creative and to explore who they are and express themselves. And so we reopened in June with this menu called You Need a Little Help from Your Friends, with a little help from your friends, and based on the Beatles album. And it's very colorful and it's very psychedelic, and it's all about being creative. And that sometimes, you know, when we are taken away from our everyday lives, we can even come back with something more than what we were giving before. And so there you go.
Lara, could you talk about the menu a little bit and what that looks like?
So the menu is super, super colorful. We travel around the world, so there's influences from different countries. Our chefs are all from different parts of the world. And so we decided to let each chef kind of express himself and develop a dish. It always relates to Italy. There's always an Italian tradition in there, but I don't know, we have a dumpling that's made with smoked pork that we make here at Casa Maria Luigia, and the dumpling sauce is more of an Asian sauce. And so it's the coming together of many different techniques and cultures. It's a menu that expresses individuality, full of color and life. And I don't know what else to tell you. It's, you know, I can't give away some of the dishes.
Well, we have to just go. We have to plan to go.
Come and try it.
When things open up and we can travel, we will be there.
We really are.
We'll be there.
Full of, you know, wonderful European travelers from Switzerland and France and Germany and Italy. But it's so sad not to have the Americans back, because this is my little, you know, paradise of English speakers. But there you go. Next year.
I just wanted to tell all of our listeners and viewers about this amazing cookbook called Bread is Gold, Massimo Bottura and friends. And the friends are famous chefs from all over the world. I have to tell you, Lara, and it's not just because you're here with us today and I'm telling you, but this is really an amazing book. It says underneath, the subtext is Extraordinary Meals with Ordinary Ingredients. And I'm not a great chef by any means, but I love that I probably have in my refrigerator or pantry 99% of the ingredients that are listed here for these amazing recipes, that it's just simple. simple ingredients can make the most delicious foods. And I love that there are little recipe notes. There's lines for recipe notes.
That's right.
Ingredients. I love the photos. And most importantly, I love the little interviews, with the little vignettes of famous chefs and how Massimo knows them and how far their history goes back and how they are involved. But lastly, I just wanted to say, we were talking about support as one of the main ingredients, and all of the proceeds from this book goes to Food for Soul to create and sustain community kitchens around the world. So I love this book. I wanted to plug this book, and
you can find the link on gratefulgoddesses.com if you would like to purchase this book as well to help support Food for Soul.
Thank you guys so much. This book, which I always have around too, one of the reasons I love this book, not only because I worked very hard on it and I did all the writing for it and the storytelling, and it brought me so much closer to all the chefs who participated in this project, but it's a super light book. It doesn't weigh anything. It's one of the only cookbooks you'll ever buy that is super, super light, and you can get wet and nothing happens. And thank you for picking up on the recipe notes, because I'm always writing stuff all over my cookbooks and making a mess. And so when we made this cookbook, I really wanted there to be space. So people could be like, oh, I didn't really like the garlic in there, or I wanted more Parmesan. And yeah, you can make great food just from what's ever in your refrigerator. You don't have to go to the grocery store.
And if our listeners and viewers want to contact you, how can they do that?
They can contact me at info@foodforsoul.it. Food for Soul is our foundation, and I basically read all the emails that are coming through there. We have a very small team, and they're always forwarding things to me. So that's info@foodforsoul.it.
And that will be on our website as well.
Okay, Lara, last question about all of these fabulous ingredients. What did we forget to ask you about? What are the last few ingredients you need for success and for your dreams?
Well, this ingredient, I thought I learned it from Massimo, but in hindsight, I also learned it from my mother. One of the most important ingredients to dream, to have success, but to also enjoy your life is a little bit of folly. Never forget to do the unexpected. Never forget to do that crazy thing that everyone's like, that's crazy. Folly, that it doesn't make sense. You can't rationalize it. It's, the numbers don't, it's not 2 + 2. It's not going to turn out to be 4. It's going to be 6, or it's going to be 10. So let things get a little crazy sometimes. Do things that don't make sense. Just a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying, go out and change your whole life, but there are moments in every moment, there are moments in the day that we can just have a little moment of folly. And sometimes that means we're going to laugh at an inappropriate time, and then everyone else is going to laugh with us. Or we're going to, I don't know, just provoke someone in a conversation, and all of a sudden things are going to turn around, or make a decision we normally wouldn't make and challenge ourselves in some way. So I think a little bit of folly in life, in every day, is just a small dose, can make unexpected things happen.
That is an amazing ingredient, and listeners, viewers, it's like the cherry on the top. Thank you for sharing your recipe for a dream, Lara. All right, what are your takeaways from Lara Gilmore?
She's amazing, so inspiring. I love her story. I love the love story between she and Massimo. I love her passions for not just kind of, serving her own little part of the world, but serving really the entire world with Food for Soul and the cookbook and everything she's doing. I just think she's so amazing. And now I really can't wait to go visit her in Italy.
Isn't she personable? I mean, when she reminded me, we did meet in the kitchen. And that's so funny, because I remember also just her always coming and, how are you? Are you enjoying your stay? What can we do to help? And just being so down to earth, right? And wearing her fashionable Gucci shoes. Like, that's really cool. Lara, how about you?
I really found she is blessed with a gift of teaching and really a deep thinker. And the fact that she really was able to take the challenge of raising a child with special needs and find the silver lining and just be so positive. I feel her and Massimo as a couple really were able to connect, and wow, I'm just blown away. I think she has a lot of stories to tell, and people are obviously learning from her with her 2 missions and her book, at that cookbook. I really want to read all of her, anything that she's printed, and she's just someone to look up to, and she's an empowering woman. So it was really a joy to listen to her.
It's such a treat, I know.
Yeah.
And Dina?
Yeah, I mean, what there's nothing but, rave to say. I found my takeaways were, I found her to have this incredible ease about her. It seems that, and I don't want to, not that anything comes easy, but it seems like everything comes very naturally to her. These things, these amazing things that she's doing, and they seem to just trickle out with ease. And the other thing that I found about her that was so incredible is she's very humble. I mean, in an incredible way. Like, she, as we watched on Netflix, and if you watch the story, which I did, she takes 0 credit. Like, even the cookbook, she was like, yes, I wrote this whole thing. Like, and she's not like, her name doesn't have to be front and center. And she really finds this place next to her husband. And like she says, she waits for her opportunity and so on and so forth. But yet she's just, she's the wizard behind the scenes, right? And like,
Yes.
It's not
Exactly.
doesn't, she's the donor who's anonymous all the time, like, so it was so incredible to get to know her, and, all that was, all that she's doing, and incredible.
I think things
it seems like your best friend, right? Like, I could have sat here and talked to her. Like, I actually, like, I have all these notes, right? Like, for today, and my part, and my this, and my that. And like, I was just like, oh.
I know.
Wonderful.
I think that things come to her, it seems like, easily because she's open to it. She has such positivity. Even when I said to her, oh, we're having a senior moment, we're over 50, she said, don't say that, which is true. We do that a lot. I do that a lot. And I think it's so important to not do that, and to really say, okay, I just forgot something. Oh, okay. Not put ourselves down. So yeah, I agree. She was such a treat.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
Welcome everyone to Favorite Things. It's like an adult show and tell. And we have Lara Gilmore with us, joining us from Modena. And we are going to get to see her favorite things as well, which I'm so excited to see. So first, let's start with Dina. What did you bring along today?
I didn't bring it, but I've been
okay.
about it.
Yes.
In reading about Lara, I saw your passion for art, and contemporary art in particular, and I share that passion with you. There was a big Warhol exhibit here this summer that I was in my happy place. And one contemporary artist that I am particularly fond of is Chuck Close. I love photography, and the fact that he sort of has that photorealist part to it, as well as the art. He's one that I like to gravitate towards. Don't have any of his work. Well, big dream one day, right? So I was curious, some of your favorites, artists, contemporary artists.
Well, I love Chuck Close. I don't have any Chuck Close either, because it's a little bit out of my budget. He's an amazing artist, because he's one of those artists, I don't know if you know the story, but he was a realist painter. And then he has a debilitating disease, and so he's in a wheelchair. And he was determined to still keep painting, and so he created this kind of grid structure that would take him. He makes very large canvases that would move him up and down the canvas. And so but he had to make all his brush marks very small, and so he started making paintings as if it was a pixelized digital image. And so he was able to combine technology with his disability to create works of art that he would have never, ever made otherwise. And so in a way, we go back to the mistake. We go back to, like, when you hit a hurdle in life, you're going to find a way to get over it. And the artist has become, because of these paintings.
Right.
Yes, The other ones are wonderful, but the paintings that you fell in love with are those paintings. So Chuck Close is very dear to my heart. I love artists, you know, I love the Americans, whether it's, what I love about artists in general, and Massimo and I have always tried to, when we can, to know the artist and then buy their artwork, because there's this whole relationship that gets established. So most of our collection is based on artists that we have met and known and been able to purchase their artwork. And so it's not only about aesthetics or ideas, but also about, you know, the people themselves. And so that has been very enriching for us.
That's fantastic. Featured goddess Lara, how about you? We have two Laras here. Okay. Lara.
Okay, well, I chose this ladle, soup ladle, and this was my mom's, and my mother passed away 25 years ago, right before, well, she passed away right after I got married, and I was collecting her things to keep in my home, and this was an immediate, I must have this, when I was dividing between my siblings. And it really has been at times a little difficult to use when my journey started off missing my mother so much, but it literally brings me such joy in the kitchen. And it has this broken handle. It's blue, and her eyes were blue. So, and it's one of my favorite colors. So I think that adds to the joy when I'm using it. But I literally feel that when one of my kids picks it up and I see them using it, and I truly feel that my mom is part of the kitchen with me, and she's there helping me nurture. And Lara, as you touched upon, that sharing a meal and cooking is such an intimate experience. And I felt that through my life and love cooking. So this will continue. It's not perfect, it's broken, but that's another message. Perfect things are not the ones that always inspire us. And this is my happiness in my kitchen. So that's it.
I love that.
I love it. It's beautiful. Alyssa, what is your favorite thing today?
And mine's a little unwieldy, so I'm going to do my best. But especially now, during these times, this is like one of my favorite, I'm going to call it pandemic purchases on Amazon, by the way. This is this amazing like bamboo board, cheese board. We've been doing a lot of cocktailing, wine and cheese around here, around 5 o'clock every day. And what I love about this is it has like all these fun little we don't have a lot of storage here in these city places. So big things are hard to store sometimes, but this has this whole pull-out tray, and I'm going to try it holding this, but your knives and your little chalk to write what kind of cheese it is, and little knives and bottle opener. And on the other side, it holds these little open trays, which have these little, gosh, this is big, these little dishes and little sort of things in the corners for olives and all this stuff. So I love that it's like all in one. It's so compact. We've been using it like every day. Hopefully when we can entertain again, when the world opens up, I will use it frequently. But as I said, one of my favorite pandemic purchases thus far.
And I'm coming over when you do that. I am currently in Canada visiting my parents at their lake home. And as you can see behind me, there's a piano that has been here. And this lake house is about 40 plus years old. And I've been enjoying myself here, not just, of course, to see my parents and my children are with me, but I wanted just to talk about, you see the Warhol poster behind me. I love the old, but I also love the new. So my favorite things today is new. Oh, I forgot to show you these. This is my dad when he was 15 that I'm also going to take home and frame, and my mom when she was 15. And so I found all these old pictures. But the new is inspired by Andy Warhol. This past Halloween, my husband and I were invited to a party, and the theme was Andy Warhol mod. And we were like, what are we going to dress up as? So I actually had a pillowcase delivered to my home, took it to my dry cleaner, Tim, who you say is like your community and your angels. Tim is my angel because he creates these costumes out of pillowcases. And he created this A-line dress
Oh my God.
for me to wear using this pillowcase. So Tim from Lucky Cleaners in Chicago is not just, you know, he has multi-talents. He created this dress, which reminds me of, you know, obviously Warhol, but Campbell's soup and eating soup, you know, my whole life, and comfort and home. So I like the old and the new, and those are my favorite things today. And now on to Lara Gilmore, our guest. So we'd like to know about your favorite things.
I'll show you some of my favorite things. I put them out here. Let's see if we can see them. So let me see where I am.
Yep.
One of my favorite things that I've discovered this year, and this was a total lockdown, I planted zinnias from seed because we were, you know, here in Modena. Oh, there's a bug. And I don't know if you guys have ever planted zinnias. They're the most granny flowers. They're not cool. They're not trending. They're not exotic, but they just grow like crazy. So I'm really into these old fashioned zinnias that are like 2 feet tall. And so these are my new flower arrangements. Very old school, very straightforward. Then, one of my favorite things that I love is Parmigiano Reggiano. We serve it here at Casa Maria Luigia. I think Parmigiano Reggiano is often thought of only as a cheese to be grated, whereas it's an amazing cheese to use in so many different ways. I love to put balsamic vinegar on it. And this, for me, is super healthy snack because it's protein. I'm allergic to lactose, so but Parmigiano I can eat. So anybody who has problems with lactose or dairy can eat Parmesan. And it's my snack, like pre-workout, after workout, cycling, don't know what to eat, go stay away from the crackers. I eat the Parmesan cheese. So then another thing that I love is Lambrusco. And Karen, you know, when you stayed here, we have lots of Lambrusco. It's kind of like the Coca-Cola from Emilia-Romagna. Bubbly, cold, a little bit pink. It's not champagne. It's not fancy. Doesn't cost a lot of money. It's a great summer drink. So Lambrusco, Parmigiano, these are my favorite things to snack on. Then, these are my absolute favorite shoes in the world. They're all scuffed up now because I wear them so much. They're only a year old. But these are like my Dorothy red, I want to go somewhere and imagine that I'm going home or wherever. So when I put these shoes on, there's a little bit of folly. There's a little bit of being retro and serious, but because the color is so green, I also think it's a message about thinking green, being fresh, being an iconoclast, not always having everything match. And green goes with everything I've learned. It goes with orange, it goes with red, it goes with yellow, it goes with white. So buy a pair of green shoes and you will be happy. And then books. I'm really into this new book. It's all about women artists. It's called 9th Street Women, women artists in the East Village back in the 1950s and 60s. And so often the stories about art are all about men, but they're always women who are part of those stories. And so what's great about this book is that it's not only about the amazing women like Elaine de Kooning, Lee Krasner, Joan Mitchell, but how much they influence the men of that time and the artists of that time. So I'm obsessed with this book right now. And then I wanted to make a little cocktail, which is very easy, simple, sparkling. Mine happens to be a rosé, nothing too fancy. I put a drop of balsamic vinegar in it.
Oh,
and in an instant, it can become a Kir Royale. It's got this great color. The balsamic kind of sticks to the edge. It brings a little acidity. So if you have even a Prosecco or something, try it.
We're all vicariously tasting it through you.
Delicious, unexpected. I think making your own drinks and experimenting, and whether it's making your own version of a gin tonic or a Kir Royale or a cocktail, is always fun because once again, it's often men who are behind the bar, but really we've got all the creativity and we know our ingredients better than anyone else. So green shoes, make a cocktail, read a book about women artists, and eat a little bit of Parmesan. That's my advice.
What you don't realize, Lara, is I often refer to the Wizard of Oz. And when you said click your heels and, to imagine that you're home, that is something that I often say, right, guys? I often say there's no place like home. And, that you have when Glinda the Good Witch says you have the power all along, my dear, I feel like we all have the power. And thank you for sharing your favorite things, because it really makes us feel like we're in Italy, that we're in Modena, we're enjoying some flowers and Kir Royale and the Parmigiano. I didn't know that you could eat it if you're lactose. So that's that's a very good tip. I'm going to go upstairs. It's morning here, so we're going to go and eat our Parmesan. And thank you for
breakfast too. So
thank you so much for sharing your favorite things and for joining us, and for most of all, letting us feel at home with you today.
Ciao ragazze.
Ciao.
Yeah? Go get it. She's my daughter. Yes, she goes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
Love that.
Oh, yeah, my daughter too. Taylor. Look at what your mom is going to do.
I love that.
Put on the top. And two.
Oh, my God, that is the coolest.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.